Hello and welcome to Raw Sports Takes. Today is January 6th, 2025. I hope everybody had a happy holidays there. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's. I had quite a bit of a holiday. I had a good time. I had pretty much Christmas over there at the beach. So that was kind of fun to watch my son and my family there. That was pretty, it was, I guess it's a regular Christmas here in Texas now. It was like about, 80 degrees. My son was in the pool, which is kind of crazy to think about. In Christmas, it's warm enough where you could be in the pool. Uh, New Year's was another thing. It was a little different. I got to stay here. Actually went to the Spurs game. They were playing the Clippers that day, New Year's Eve. Drank a little bit, way too much actually during the game and after the game. That I actually fell asleep before New Year's. Before the New Year's, before it hit, I actually woke up at 11:58 just in time to see it, but then I went right back to sleep. So I am a little bit older, so it kind of works out like that. I feel like most older people now is kind of, New Year's it's not that big of a deal, especially my kid's so young, so he's not doesn't enjoy fireworks like I would. 4-year-old is with the sparkles, maybe a little, not even a black cat because it's a little bit too loud. Uh, but it's just like that. And it's been 2 weeks now since the last episode I had, so we have a lot of things to go through today. I have a lot of things in the course. I have, of course, the NFL. We're gonna talk now that the playoffs are set. We're gonna go through all the teams. We're gonna talk about some coaches that got fired, a little bit of that. Also, college football is in full swing. The playoffs. We're gonna talk about my picks there. Some of them were dumb because I just wanted to go against the grain, and other picks were pretty accurate, pretty on. And then from there, after that, we're gonna move on, but to other things. But first thing first, we're gonna start off with the NBA. As you guys like to know, I like to start off with talking about the NBA, and usually when I talk about NBA, I'm usually talking about Spurs. So the last game I went to was the one that was against the Clippers. It was one of the first games. It was just a complete blowout from beginning to end. It was nice to see that for a change. I got really tired of watching the Spurs. For some reason, they like to start off really slow in the first quarter, and they're down by a few points, and then sometimes they're down by double digits, and then they got to play catch up. And I really hate that crap about it, and it kind of makes them a little bit intense. You also got the NBA trade line coming up, which is going to be a lot of players to watch, to see a lot of movement. As far as you guys like to know, I like to talk mostly Spurs. And first things first is Wembanyama. Wembanyama had a hell of a month of December. His first 100 games were some of the most spectacular 100 games. Uh, Almost had as much as assists. He has blocks. He had that Christmas game where he had 42 points. Should have had 45. If my memory serves right, I believe that was that foul on Chris Paul, and that 3-pointer should have counted by Wembanyama, and it should have been 45 points, tying the great Will Chamberlain for the most points in the Christmas debut. But either way, it was a hell of a game. Spurs versus Knicks. The Knicks have been playing very well lately. They kind of getting back into their groove, and they're actually finding their chemistry there with the new acquisition of Karl Anthony Towns. And it was just a good game just to watch overall. And so it was good to watch. It was good to see. And it was good to see that Wembanyama is not scared of the spotlight. He is really not scared of the big games. He's not there. He has the it factor. And he was actually very pissed off after the game after he lost it, which it's great to see. Because sometimes the worst label you can have in sports is being labeled as great potential or great talent. But if you don't have the it factor, the Michael Jordan factor, as some people like to call it, the Kobe Bryant Mamba factor, that you want to, it's just that you want the ball at the end of the game. You want to win the game. You're not friends with the other team. You are pissed off after the game if you lost. Like that is what he is. That is what Wembanyama is, and is showing throughout all these games. So that was a hell of a, like I said, that was a hell of a job there by them. Hell of a job by Wembanyama. Devin Vassell's been playing a little better. Then he got into a little slump there for a little bit, and it ended up not being well. But it was just one of those things. I mean, they lost by 3 points, 117 to 114. The game before that, that's the game that was probably the most irritating game of all in the month of December. Was probably the Philadelphia game, where Wembanyama where apparently Joel Embiid does not like female refs. Apparently, he was just yelling at her and just screaming at her, which you could call it flopping by Wembanyama, and I am a big Wembanyama fan, but he did flop on that last foul call by Joel Embiid, and then, but apparently he just did not like the call, and I get it, he doesn't like the call, but you don't have to scream at somebody and get really pissed off. So I'm not a fan of Joel Embiid as a basketball player. I am, but as a person, to me he's really just a piece of shit. Lazy ass worker, and I would tell it to his face. I don't give a shit if he's more than 2 feet taller than me. He is really a lazy piece of shit. And I think he just did not want to play that game. I think at that point, it's easy to scream at somebody when you're 2 feet taller and you're bigger than them, and hold me back, kind of thing. So that was a weird game. What pissed me off about that game was that Joel Embiid was out, and which is their best player. And then the Spurs just could not figure a way to win that game. And they ended up losing 111 to 106. That was the most frustrating game. They missed a hell of a lot of shots, a lot of open shots, a lot of layups. It was really frustrating to watch. But it's one of those things. What can you do? Other than that, they had really good wins throughout the month. They had that win against New Orleans, played very well, shot the ball very good. One of the biggest wins they had also was the one against the Denver Nuggets series. That was a weird one because it was a back-to-back game. It was a Friday game, and was it a Thursday? No, it was a Thursday and a Friday game, which was really weird. And it was just because I don't like playing the same opponent back-to-back, especially when you're playing them the second night in a row. The first game was great for the Spurs. They show a lot of moxie. They show a lot of grit. They really came back at it, and they won it by defense. And let's be real, Wembanyama is the defensive player of the year. No questions asked. Nobody even comes close. Yes, Djokovic scored 41 points, I believe, in that game and 18 rebounds. But when you needed a stop and you needed to stop the most, they were able to stop Djokovic and win the game. And that was the biggest thing there. So that was a big win. And I mean, let's be real. Djokovic is the MVP. And he's probably going to go down. If he doesn't win another championship, he probably is going to go down as one of the most underrated big men of all time. And I will put David Robinson in that conversation. It really shocked me when I watched the first 100 games of Wembanyama versus the first 100 games of David Robinson. David Robinson beats him in every single stat. Points, blocks. And the only thing I think he doesn't win is assists and rebounds. He also beats him, which goes to how great of a player David Robinson was, and nobody's talked about him before. But now, hopefully people keep talking about him now because of all the things that are going on with Wembanyama. But that was a hell of a game. That was an MVP versus the future MVP, which, of course, Djokovic is the MVP. He's probably going to win the MVP this year versus Wembanyama, who's going to be the future MVP. And they win battle toe-to-toe in that game. It was really good to watch, and the Spurs ended up winning that game on defense. The second game, which was the last game that the Spurs have played, that was a kind of a crazy-ass game in the sense of I guess the Nuggets finally came out there and really wanted to play. And from reports have it that the coach of the Nuggets, Malone, was really pissed off that nobody was in the face of Wembanyama and wasn't really guarding him. So they were a little bit more physical and a little bit more tougher there, and they ended up losing, which is okay. Spurs are still young. They're still going to take a while for them to really grow together, and it's going to take 2 years probably for them to be a really top contender, like top 3, top 4 in the NBA. Well, for sure top 5 in the NBA, and so it's going to take them a few years there. They need another piece. They need another player. To me right now, the untouchable players has to be Wembanyama and Castle. It kind of pisses me off that I don't see Castle play enough and more minutes. Yes, his shooting percentage is not great compared to other rookies, but he has a moxie, he has defense, and he has the it factor too with Wembanyama. He just goes about business. He just wants to ball, and that's all the business he wants to do. He doesn't care about anything else. Those are two untouchables. The other one's Devin Vassell. Devin Vassell's real streaky, and sometimes I think Devin Vassell forgets who the alpha dog is on that team and who's the go-to player on that team is. So he kind of gets away from this. Sochan, I like Sochan this year more than I have liked him the previous 2 years. There was a lot of Sochan. How can I say this in a nice way? But I really want to say dick riders, but because there really is. There's a lot of fanboys of Sochan. Jeremy Sohan did. If you say something bad about him, then you get really pissed off. But let's be real. The guy is good. He's good on defense. He's a good hustler. He's a good rebounder. But sometimes you're watching the game and god damn it, Sohan, fucking make a damn layup to save your life. You can't make a layup. Like, he misses the easiest layups. He goes for the spectacular dunk that does not work and it pisses me off. Just make the damn shot. It's not that hard. You're freaking 6'10". You should be able to dunk it easily or just lay it up, but you completely miss it. And he cannot shoot, even though people are going to say, oh, he shot well the last game, three-pointers. Okay, he shot one game good of three-pointers. But his shooting form is horrific. And I don't think, hopefully it gets better because he's still very young. But at the same time, it's kind of one of those, like, ugh, like, I don't know. I don't think he's untouchable. And I think when he plays on the floor, if you really watch the game when it's him and Wembanyama, teams tend to clog the lane because they know that Jeremy Sohan is not a threat. It's not a threat to mid-range. It's not a threat from the three-point line. The only threat he has is for a lob or for a rebound, which they just clog the lane, and it makes it harder for Wembanyama to either drive or for really to work on the post. So that's why sometimes you also see a lot of Wembanyama come out to the three-point line a lot in a pick and roll because Jeremy Sohan is just clogging up the lane. And a perfect example is the Denver Nuggets game, the game before where he did not play. When he did not play and it was Castle starting, instead, it looked more fluid, it looked better in chemistry-wise, and the team looked like they were passing the ball a lot better. I'm not a Jeremy Sohan hater. I just don't think he's that great of a player like people think that he is. And that's just the plain truth about that one. Unless he shows me otherwise, I don't think. Now, the NBA trade line's coming up, and there's some teams out there, and there's some players that are very disgruntled. Some of them are, of course, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's pissed off. He just got suspended for 7 games by the Heat, and he looks very angry, and he doesn't want to play anymore there. So they're probably going to trade him. They're not going to trade him. Do I want him on the Spurs? Hell no. That guy reminds me, that guy's a damn freaking head case. He's kind of like the Dennis Rodman kind of issue. He has a head case. When he wants to play, he can ball, but he just an age alone. I don't want him. He's too old to be on the team, and he's just going to clog up the lane and just take away baskets from the young players that I will. I'd rather keep Devin Vassell in that case than actually trade him. One player that I do have in mind that I really, really want the Spurs to get is, of course, DeAndre Fox from the Sacramento Kings. Now, that's a player there that is willing to, that it'll be fun to watch, just him pick and roll, him and Wembanyama. It'll be incredible to watch. They're both still very young. He's still very young, so still he fits the timeline of what the Spurs want. They find that's their future point guard, and they can keep him. It'll be like a Tony Parker, Tim Duncan kind of scenario, kind of thing there, and it'll be beautiful to watch. And he has, if you watch, not last year, but the year before that, playoff-wise, that kid went totally off. And he looked like he was a top 5 player in the NBA. And this brings me to the conversation of what Spurs, what would the Spurs want to do? Do they want to keep they could potentially have they have the Hornets draft pick this year, first rounder, if they're not, but it's lottery protected. That you got the Chicago Bulls first round pick, if it's not lottery protected, it's lottery protected too. So if those teams end up in the lottery, the Spurs don't get it. And then they have their own first, and then they have the Atlanta first. Of course, the Atlanta's not protected. That's the one that's really valuable, especially if they start, like, an injury happens to one of their players, and they just main role players, and they start sucking, and then all of a sudden that becomes a very valuable pick. Now, if you're able to get even all first round picks, all 4 of them, and you get, like, let's say number 12, number 15, maybe the Atlanta one falls to top 10, and you get like a number 7 there, and then a number 18 pick. To me, after the first 5 picks in the NBA draft coming up next year with the Cooper flag and everything, nobody's going to trade you for Cooper flag. That's plain and simple. Let's be real. Nobody's that crazy enough to say, yeah, I'll trade you the first round pick for this kid that could be the next great player in the NBA. Next, not maybe generational talent like Wembanyama, but maybe like Apollo Balchera from the Orlando Magic, which is really, really good. Before he got injured there with the Magic, he was looking at being an MVP kind of player. MVP kind of season he was having there with the Magic. But nobody's going to trade you that first pick. So what do you do at that situation? Do you just say, "Fuck it, I'll just keep these first 4 round picks, first 4 rounders, and I'll get draft 4 young players again and try to develop"? You don't have enough space in the roster to be doing that. You still have. What are you gonna do? You're gonna go ahead and cut 4 players on the team right now to make room for these 4 rookies, are mid-tier players. To me, that doesn't happen. I have a really good friend. He's a very good Oklahoma. He's a big Oklahoma City Thunder fan. And he was going through the same dilemma a few years back with the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I told him the same thing. I'm like, at what point did you just stack up so many young players that it's just not enough space? It's not enough time. It's not enough. There's only one ball to go around for all these young players. I'm like, what do you do? Eventually, you got to make moves, and you got to draft players. You got to trade players to really make moves, and that's when the Thunder started making some moves, and now they're looking at their players. They're pretty much set. Williams, Chet, and then of course SGA. They're 3 players right there, and then after that, everything else can move. They ended up moving away from I forgot what the hell was his name. That point guard they had there for a while. They ended up trading him last year to Chicago. But that's what the Spurs, I feel like, are in that kind of position right now. Let's trade for somebody, preferably a point guard, or that really fits into the mold, into the timeline that the Spurs are looking. And Fox fits that mold. His wife is from San Antonio. He has a house in San Antonio. He probably wants to come to San Antonio, and that fits the mold. One other crazy player that I would like to see the Spurs get, and I think they can fix him. And people are gonna say this is crazy. Zion Williamson from the freaking Pelicans. The Spurs can sign him. I think they could trade for him. They have enough picks. They have enough players to trade for him. Of course, the untouchables is going to be Castle and Wembanyama. Everybody else can go. But can you imagine a lineup of Castle, Chris Paul, Wembanyama, Zion, and then let's say like Julian Champagne, I guess, because they traded Devin Vassell, and they traded Jeremy Sohan, and they traded Keldon, and they traded about 5 first rounders probably. But a lineup like that is kind of crazy to think about. There's no way no team can stop that. Nobody can stop Zion. When Zion wants to drive to the basket, not even Wembanyama himself can stop him. The guy is just huge. The guy is big. The guy is strong. The guy is super athletic. He's just shorter than Wembanyama, but other than that, he can finish with that. He's a lefty, so he can finish with that left hand pretty well. Him and Wembanyama, there's no way nobody can stop him in a pick and roll. And either a pick and roll, or they're just destroying you every single time. They're gonna put the other team in foul trouble so fast that the other team is gonna run out of players. Plain and simple. And Zion needs to go to a team that will fix him, but that will not necessarily fix him, but get him into the right mentality of that this is a profession, that this is his bread and butter, then this is his livelihood here, and then they can fix that. They did it with Boris Diaw. The Spurs did it with Boris Diaw. They put in what's one of the funniest things, and I believe in a contract, which is the fat clause, where he had to weigh in every single week and wait so much. And if he waits so much, then he got fined for it. I think the Spurs can do that. I think the Spurs can get into his head. They can mentally prepare him. They can mentally get him ready, and they can physically actually get him away from getting all those injury prones. And I think the main reason Zion is injury prone is just he's overweight. He's fat. Last time I saw him was they said they had a short video he was showing off. I think it was either Instagram or some kind of social media. He was showing off that he got a new tattoo, and he took off his shirt. And I was, holy shit, that guy is fat. That guy is fat as shit. He has bigger titties than maybe my wife. He has some big old titties. And he also had a big old gut. And it's like, damn, bro, like, I wouldn't think you're in the NBA or an athlete. That's, well, maybe a freaking offensive lineman or defensive lineman, but I've seen some offensive linemen freaking in better shape than that. But that's my whole point on that. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I want a big splash from the Spurs. I actually want to see another player, another all-star level kind of player come and play with the Spurs. And there's going to be a lot of teams, but knowing the way the Spurs are, typically they don't draft, they don't trade for big players. They'll trade hopefully, if anything, they'll make a move where they trade for a backup center. They really need a backup center. That's another thing that was pissing me off this last month, was that Mitch Johnson kept on kept playing the small ball once Wembanyama was out, and then the Spurs were just getting out rebounded. The other team was getting more second hand shots, and I mean, I'm just here watching basketball. I'm not coaching or in any kind of or watching film or anything. And just me looking at that, I can tell you're getting killed. But he kept, for some reason, the last 2 games he hasn't done it, but before that, he just kept playing small ball, and I hated it. I really hated small ball because the Spurs were getting dominated on the rebounds, and it was pretty pathetic to watch. He kind of got away. Coach has gotten away from that one. Hopefully, they don't keep playing that. Another player in mind that I would like to see on the Spurs, there's a few ones. Cam Johnson from the Brooklyn Nets. Clearly, the Brooklyn Nets are looking to freaking just totally tear that team apart. That's another player to keep an eye on. Nicholas Bushik from the Chicago Bulls. He's a good backup center for the Spurs. That's another one that I wouldn't mind having as a backup center. Like I said, the Spurs need a backup center. Zach Collins is not cutting it, plain and simple. He's definitely regress from the last 2 years. 2 years ago, he was actually pretty good and pretty decent. Last year, he was pretty terrible, and he's pretty much stayed at that same level this year. I actually would rather than play Bassi, the other third center the Spurs have, than that guy. Jonas Valanciunas from the Washington Wizards wouldn't be a bad backup center either. There's a few players out there, and I think the Spurs can definitely make some moves and I think that's more the move they're gonna make. I think they're gonna get another backup center really, and maybe trade Keldon Johnson and maybe a pick here or there and pick up another role player. In reality, it's what the Spurs do. It's what they always do during trade line. They don't trade nobody big. Even when LaMarcus Aldridge years ago was looking to get traded, they never traded him, and then they just cut him at the end. So that was kind of sad to watch because I believe the Spurs could have got something for him. Now, the next game coming up is going to against the Bulls. I think that's a very winnable game. It's at Bulls, and the Spurs should win that game. And then the big game this week is going to be Wednesday against the Greek Freak. That's going to be a hell of a show. And I'm glad they're putting it on ESPN and put a nationwide telecast, because it kind of pissed me off this last week that you got Djokovic versus Wembanyama. Like I said, MVP versus future MVP. And it wasn't televised nationwide. That was just very... that was bad by, I think, TV. And then, I mean, I know the TV ratings are down here in the United States. Nationwide, they're a little bit, they're actually climbing up, but that would have been a great matchup to put nationwide, and just so people see how good Djokovic is and how good Wembanyama is. That's the biggest thing. He is the future of the NBA, I believe. Him and Ant-Man from the Timberwolves. But those are my thoughts on the NBA. As we have it right now, standing wise and everything, the Spurs are currently number 8, which will put them in the play-in kind of thing, in the play-in games. Pretty much nothing has really changed too much as far as in the East. In the NBA, you still have Cleveland Cavaliers number 1, Boston number 2, New York Knicks is the team that, like I said lately, they've been winning quite a bit of games. They're 8-2 the last 10 games. Orlando Magic is a surprise to me that they'll be able to hold down the number 4 spot there with all the injuries they have, especially their major players. That's a hell of a job there by the head coach. The Milwaukee Bucks is the other team that's kind of moving up and finding its footing, and it's really getting up there. They're number 5 right now. Teams that are going in the downward spiral are your usual teams, your Brooklyn Nets, Toronto Raptors, Hornets, and Washington Wizards. Those are your bottom teams. On the West, you still got the Thunder number 1. Houston is the price number 2. They've been playing very well. Memphis Grizzlies is another team. It doesn't come as a shocker to me because if you remember 3 years ago, Memphis Grizzlies was up there. I believe they were number 1 or number 2 seed in the West. Nuggets are up there. They were just the champions 2 years ago. The Lakers, they're kind of finding their footing a little bit too. But the West is very super competitive. If you look at the West, from number 10 to number, I believe, to even number 2, only 5 games separate them from 2 to number 10, which that's kind of crazy to think about. If a team goes off like in a 3-game losing streak and just can't get it together, they could finish number 9 to number 10, and then also they could be the opposite. A team that's number 9 right now, like the Golden State Warriors or even the Spurs, if they're going like on a 3-4 game winning streak, then you're looking at them being what is that? They could be number 3 on the overall in the standings. But we're almost getting there. We're getting close to the midseason there. We're gonna go more in depth into the NBA later on, once we get there to the midseason. But as for now, that's all I wanted to talk about. That now the other big one that's been happening right now is college football. College football, it was interesting. It was actually, I don't know what to think about college football, because it's just one of those things like actually the playoffs have been pretty okay. I actually do not like I don't like the 12-man setup, the 12-team playoff setup. If you go back to the 12-team setup, the way it's been set up, it's pretty. The first round of games were pretty pathetic, and there was really nothing to talk about. There was really nothing there. I mean, it went pretty much like everybody expected it to go. You had Clemson got their ass kicked by Texas, of course. Ohio State beat the crap out of Tennessee. Penn State beat the shit out of SMU. Notre Dame beat the crap out of Indiana. There was like no competitive games. Actually, I hope as we go forward later on in the college playoffs, I think they should make it only 8 teams, maybe 10, but in reality, it should be 8 teams. The 8 best teams in the college football. After 8, you're really not getting anything after that. You're not getting anything really that great because you're not getting a good product. You really aren't. It was pretty bad to watch. Quarterfinal wise. So we had that, which pretty much everything went to script. Just the favorites won, of course. And then the quarterfinals, the Arizona State game and Texas game was probably the only competitive game there. It went to double overtime. Arizona State at one point almost beat honestly, they should have beat the Texas Longhorns in that one. The one that was a really surprising game in the college football to me, I picked Ohio State to win, by the way. Ohio State versus Oregon, but I did not expect the ass whooping that they gave them. Like, that was just a complete wiping of the floor of Oregon. Oregon clearly was not ready for that game. Or maybe Ohio State had a thing. I mean, there was a rumor, not a rumor, it was an accusation, I guess you can say, that the Oregon was stealing signs. They were stealing signs from the Ohio State offense. And then the culprit of all this thing was actually the Oregon Duck. The mascot was getting accused of stealing the signs, the signals from the stealing plays from from Ohio State. So maybe that's true, because this game was a complete ass whooping. I mean, Dylan Gabriel looked like Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma. He did not look good. He looked bad. Ohio State looked great. They got 2 really good wide receivers, probably going to be first-round draft picks whenever they go to the NFL. That was great. Penn State, Boise State. That's the one game that I picked. I picked Boise State to get the upset when we had the last podcast with our guest there, Raul. But that was just shits and giggles. I really did not expect Boise State to win, and Penn State did their job. They stopped the run. They stopped their only threat there that Boise State had, and they ended up winning the game. Notre Dame, Georgia. That was the other one surprising game. The Ohio State, like I said, Oregon game wasn't surprising because I expected Ohio State to win, but I did not expect them to win in that kind of fashion. The Notre Dame Georgia game, now that was a really good, pretty much ass whooping by Notre Dame. Notre Dame played a very good game, very good. Marcus Freeman really coached them up very well, and Georgia was just not ready. A lot of drops in that game, from what I remember. A lot of drops in that game. The defense did not look good, and Notre Dame was just a classic old school football, smash mouth, just get there and win the game, and Notre Dame did that. Now, semifinals is interesting. Back to the Texas and Arizona State game, all I want to say is that running back from Arizona State should have won MVP of that game. Shit, should be MVP of the freaking bracket. That guy did everything. Threw a touchdown, ran a touchdown, almost caught a touchdown. Or did he catch a touchdown? I can't remember. But he caught that long ball. That guy was doing everything to win that game. So, just want to shout out to him. Texas, Ohio State. That's the semifinals coming up. Ohio State is such a heater right now, and they're so hot right now. And Texas, like, I don't know if Arizona State is really that good, which I don't think they're that good. They only had one weapon and one player. I could see Ohio State just completely wiping the floor with Texas again. And they're the favorite right now, I believe, to win the whole thing. So I will pick. I originally picked Texas versus Georgia as a trilogy in the original, the last podcast. Uh, I'm gonna stick. I'm gonna say it's Ohio State. Right now, they're just in so hot of a team that I don't think nobody can stop them. And I think they're gonna win it all, just the way they're playing. Which means Day's gonna keep his job as a head coach, but you never know. Texas can actually, they have a very good secondary and they could match up very well versus the wide receivers. Last time it was Texas versus Ohio State. Texas won the game, but that was, of course, years ago. But they're so hot right now that it's very hard to pick against them. My heart wants to go with Texas. You know what? I'm just sticking to my guts. I'll stick to what I said earlier before in the last podcast, and I'm sticking with Texas. I think Texas gets to the national championship. On the other side, Penn State versus Notre Dame. I expected, like I said, I was just shits and giggles Boise State. Notre Dame, Penn State. That's an interesting one. That's probably going to be the best game of the week right there. Penn State quarterback, Notre Dame quarterback. They seem to love Notre Dame quarterback there. Of course, he's a transfer from Duke. We're going to go, well, at least I'm going to go. I'm going to go with Penn State. It's going to be Penn State versus Texas in the national championship. That's going to be my prediction as of right now. Or my revised prediction, I guess. Because originally I had Texas versus Georgia. Thanks, Georgia. And those are my thoughts on that. Now, we'll get to the big one, which is the NFL. I know this is a long-ass podcast. I'm going to try to shorten it up a little bit right now. But first, we're going to go with the news. Of course, Week 18 ended up. All the games are over with. Everything is set up now. We know who's in the playoffs, who's not in the playoffs. Cowboys suck again. I hope with the 12th pick, the Dallas Cowboys select a new GM and a new owner, but that's not going to happen. We'll see what happens there. I hope they do fire Mike McCarthy, but I believe as long as Jerry Jones is alive and his family owns the team, that team, no matter if they brought Jesus Christ himself to coach the team, and they're still going to suck. So those are my thoughts on that. Really quick. Later on in the offseason, we'll go more in depth and about some moves they should make or should not make. Some of the big news, of course, you got after the game, Tyreek Hill, he says, "I'm out, bro. It was great playing here, but I'm done." So apparently he wants to get out of Miami already. We'll see what happens with that, who's able to pick him up. Does he go back to the Chiefs for a cheaper deal? Who knows? Some coaches that should have got fired now got fired. Pretty much Giants general manager and the head coach ended up staying there. Jeremy got fired after 1 year after the Patriots owner. Apparently Kraft explains that he wasn't happy with the hiring. I don't think he should have got hired in the first place because he was never an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. He was never a coordinator. He got hired right away as a head coach, and that was just going to spell disaster. Another thing that was really interesting to me in that sense is that if you were going to fire him, you should have fired him before the game started last week, this past Sunday, instead of keeping him, because he went out and won the game. And then you went from having the first overall pick, to now you're the 4th overall pick. And that's really bad if you're a Patriots fan, but I don't feel bad for Patriots fans because you won a fucking 6-7 Super Bowls over the last 6 Super Bowls the last 2 decades, so I don't really feel bad for you. But if you would have had the first pick overall, you could have much pretty traded that for 2-3 first rounders right away because there's a weak quarterback class. You only got 2 good quarterbacks that everybody's talking about. Shadon Sanders, who I think he's maybe a 2nd or 3rd round pick. 3rd round, not 2nd or 3rd pick overall, but a 2nd or 3rd rounder. And then you got Cam Ward. So in any other draft, Cam Ward, I would have think he would have been like a late first rounder. Even though I like the kid a lot, but I don't think. But they're going to probably go 1 and 2. So you probably, because of that, and there's nobody really, unless there always is somebody in the draft process that comes out of nowhere and ends up getting hyped up and winning. But either way, Like I said, due to that, the quarterback class being really weak, somebody would have traded up. Somebody desperate like let's say the Raiders. But now it's not that. Now you don't have the first round pick, and now you cannot trade it, and you got to wait for the fourth pick, which you probably would have ended up there with the fourth pick if you would have ended up trading. So I don't feel bad for you, but whatever. Uh, a lot of also things happen. Seahawks fired an offensive coordinator Grubb after one season in Seattle. That was bound to happen. Their offense kind of stalled there at the end. They were looking pretty bad. But that's pretty much it. I mean, the biggest news, of course, other news is Christian Watson of the Packers got hurt. I feel bad for them. The kid was looking a good better and looked like he was the number one receiver there. But now that we get to the playoffs is interesting. My revision of playoffs at the beginning of the year, I had, as you know, my prediction was the Bengals versus the Lions. Bengals winning the Super Bowl, and of course, somehow, some way, they were able to fuck that up really bad. At one point, there was hope, but then the Chiefs decided they did not want to play anybody. Because I don't know what the Chiefs' thinking was in that. I don't know if the Chiefs were like, maybe we're gonna rest players and we don't. There's no point. We're already the first pick. We already have the first, the number one seed. So it's one of those things. And I don't think they wanted to see the Bengals in the playoffs. But then at the same time, it's kind of also your biggest competition is gonna be the Bills and Ravens, right? If the Chiefs went out there and beat the Broncos, like started all their players and beat the Broncos, then they would have been number 7 would have been the Bengals would have got in because of course the Dolphins lost, so the Broncos would have got in, and it would have been the Bengals would have got in. They would have been the number 7 seed versus the Bills. I mean, do you let the Bengals take out your biggest competition when this is the Bills? Like Joe Burrow in the playoffs is scary, and a lot of people, especially me, I'm a big Joe Burrow fan, and also at the same time, I also like to watch good football, and it sucks that I not be able to watch Joe Burrow throw the football in the playoffs. It's just one of those things. If you love football, you want to watch the Bengals. You want to watch Joe Burrow. You want to watch that passing, that very beautiful passing game they have there with Higgins and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So I don't know if that was the thinking there. The Chiefs are like, maybe we do want to play our players, so that way the Bengals get in and the Bengals play the Bills, and hopefully the Bengals knocked out the Bills. But then is Joe Burrow is going to Burrowhead, as he renamed it, and he's probably the only player that's not scared of going into Arrowhead, which is a Chiefs stadium, but they call it Burrowhead, and beating the Chiefs. But then again, you run into that dilemma now. There's like, shit, now we have a team that won 4 games in a row. The quarterback is hot as can be right now, and we might have to play them. So maybe the thinking was, shit, we'll let the Broncos win, and then where the Broncos get in and they play the Bills, and we don't have to play the Bills to the AFC Championship probably. I don't know what was going on there. The only exciting games also besides that one, the thing, just playoff scenarios, was probably the Buccaneers game versus the Saints. That was a crazy game because it was going back and forth. And also the Atlanta versus Panthers game, that was going back and forth. Like whoever won that game was going to get in, and whoever lost that game was going to get in. Rams, I don't know what to think about the Rams. They really just shut their players down. They could have been the 3rd seed, but they ended up just getting the 4th seed because they did not want to risk any injuries. I don't blame Sean McVay for the simple reason that we know what the Rams look like injury-wise. They look horrible. They play shitty. Teams beat the crap out of them every single time. But healthy-wise, they look unstoppable. Their offense has looked like shit the last 3 weeks compared to the last game. The last great game they had was against the Bills, where they scored over 40 points. And then after that, they haven't even combined in the last 3 weeks to score 40 points. So I don't know what's going on with the Rams. Usually when you get to this kind of playoffs, in the playoffs, you usually want to take the hottest team is usually who wins the Super Bowl, even though percentage-wise tells you that 79% or something like that, some stupid percentage, like 75% of Super Bowl winners were the number 1 seeds. So in that case scenario, you probably would think the Chiefs and Lions are favored to win the Super Bowl, which the Lions are favored to be the favorites to get into the Super Bowl and win it. Now, revising my picks from earlier in the season, of course. Uh, I did pick the Lions to go to the Super Bowl, and I still think they get to the Super Bowl. Last night proved that turnaround of that defense. They were getting healthier, and now they're going to get another bye week, which gets them even healthier. Leads me to believe Aiden Hutchinson could come back after probably the third round, so probably in the NFC Championship. So that defense is just going to get stronger and stronger, and that offense looks very well, and they're very well coached on offense. And last night they were very well coached on defense. And of course, Campbell's just a fucking wild card when it comes to calling plays and fourth round and fourth down plays and everything. So I still think the Lions get to the Super Bowl. So they're still, I'm kind of half right, I guess, Super Bowl wise right now. I still believe they do. The only major competition they're going to have, in my opinion, is probably going to be the Eagles. The Eagles have everything playoff wise that you want in the playoffs, and that's a good running game. And you got Saquon Barkley. I wish Saquon Barkley went for the record. To be honest with you, it's a shame that he didn't try. I would at least try him in the first half, play the starters in the first half just to see him. But at the same time, they got a big game, and team wise, you want to win the Super Bowl because individual records, nobody gives two shits, and nobody really cares about it as far as fan wise, unless that's the only thing you got going for you and you don't got nothing else. And I guess you like individual records, such as right now, Emmitt Smith has the most rushing yards of all time because the Cowboys don't got nothing going for them. Big games coming up this week. Of course, it's going to be Eagles versus Packers. Eagles look very well. They're well rested. Of course, they took this kind of like a bye week. Packers, they looked terrible in that first half, and they were getting dinged up. Now we learned that Christian Watts is likely out with a torn ACL. And when he's out, their offense looks pretty pedestrian. And I think, and it's going to be at Eagles, and it's going to be a freaking wild game. And I think the Eagles easily win that game. They should win that game by at least 7 points or more. I don't think the Packers have. I don't think they have that magic, and I don't think they have that kind of. Last year, of course, they were playing the Cowboys, but apparently anybody can beat the Cowboys in the playoffs. So I don't see the Packers winning that game. They kind of regress. Jordan Love has regressed this year, and he got hit again. He got kind of injured there. They say he's not injured, but we'll find out when the game starts. The other one in the NFC, you got Buccaneers versus Commanders. Buccaneers look good. But then you kind of get a two-face of Buccaneers. Like you either get the Buccaneers that were yesterday with Baker Mayfield going crazy, running the ball, doing everything he's there. And then you kind of get like the Buccaneers versus the Cowboys where they make a lot of mistakes and they end up losing the game against an inferior team. Commanders, I mean, they beat the Cowboys, which I'm glad the Cowboys lost because they got a better pick out of it. But they did set a lot of their starters out. We'll see what happens here. We'll see how good Jaden Daniels plays in a big old spotlight here in the playoffs. It's going to be at home. Buccaneers should win this one. They got the better talent. They got the better players. I'm glad Mike Evans got that last reception there to get that extra, to get to the 1,000 yards and get that, what is it, like $3 million or $2 million bonus? Something like that, something crazy. I'm just saying, if I was in the game and I was a defensive back that was playing against Mike Evans, I would tell him, hey, I'll let you catch the ball. I'll let you get to 10 yards. But pay for my dinner. I don't know. Something like that. Or you could be the opposite way. You could be like really, really trolly and really, really like a dick and just put 4 defenders on Mike Evans. Like don't even put 1 or 2. Put 4 on him and let anybody else catch the ball except him. Just so he doesn't get the 1,000 yards. Just to be a dick completely. But you know what? I probably would do the opposite if I was a coach and I knew he was trying to get to the 1,000 yards. I would put 4 players on him. And I'll be like, I don't give a shit. I'll give up a touchdown. As this game is not winnable anyways at this point, and I'm not losing anything or doing anything. At least I'm going to make that man lose some money. But that one should be it. The more interesting game out of the NFC this week is probably going to be Rams versus Vikings. We'll see how healthy the Rams are. If they are very healthy and they look very good, like 4 weeks ago, they're going to stomp the Vikings, I think. But the Vikings defense is a top 3 defense for sure in the NFL. Sam Darnold went back to the pumpkin that he is. He looked pathetic against the Detroit Lions. Maybe that's the thing of how good the Detroit Lions defense has improved in the last 2 weeks, or maybe Sam Darnold, that's it for him. I don't know. We're gonna find out. This is gonna be one of those games. If he plays well and loses, he's gonna get paid very good money, either out of the Vikings or out of the Giants. I think the Giants are going to overpay for Sam Darnold in the offseason. If they lose and get their ass kicked and Sam Darnold looks pathetic again, which what did he throw yesterday? 41 passes and 11 or 12 completions, something 166 yards passing, which terrible, really terrible. If he looks like that, then maybe the Vikings and other teams hesitate to maybe want to sign him. So Sam Darnold hopefully play well for that one. That's going to be that week. So the winners this week at the NFC is probably going to be Eagles, Buccaneers, and I'm going to take the Rams. So those three teams there. So pretty much the top seeds. Then the Lions are going to play the lowest seed, which will be the Rams. So which will be another interesting game as far as Rams versus Lions. We got the Stafford. We're going to hear a lot about the Stafford and the Jared Goff comparisons and the trades and all this bullshit. And then you're going to get the Eagles, Buccaneers. The Eagles probably want revenge on the Buccaneers for losing last year in the playoffs. I could see the Eagles winning that one. I could see the Lions beating the Rams. So you're going to have Lions versus Eagles. I'll take the Lions at home, especially if Aiden Hutchinson comes back and Lions are in the Super Bowl. On the other side, in the AFC, you got Bills versus Broncos. Bills should win. They should really make Bo Nix look like a rookie quarterback and really put a stomping on them. Congratulations to Allen. I'm going to say it right now. Josh Allen is going to win the MVP. I don't have no doubt in my mind that he wins the MVP. Usually the way I judge MVPs is, and I think MVP postseason should be considered. It should be put in consideration for MVPs also. Because a lot of people will say, no, it was during the regular season. But if you're going to do regular season MVP, then Joe Burrow should win the MVP then. But you're not going to give it to Joe Burrow because he didn't put his team in the playoffs. So if you're going to make the case that he doesn't put his team in the playoffs, then the playoffs should be considered also for MVP consideration, those games. Just saying. Josh Allen, congratulations to him. MVP of the league. They should beat the Broncos. That should be a pretty easy game. Next game is Ravens versus Steelers. Ravens have been looking really bad. The only reason this might be a competitive game is just Steelers play tough. It's a divisional game, so it should be pretty cool to watch. I'll take Ravens probably by a field goal. I'm glad that their field goal kicker is looking a little bit better now. He's kicking better, so they should win by a field goal. Texans versus Chargers. Hey, Chargers, take this as a bye week. Texans look pathetic. They're probably the second worst team limping into the playoffs against this, besides the Steelers. Chargers should win that game pretty easily. Jim Harbaugh should be considered head coach of the year, but it's probably going to go to Campbell. I believe Campbell should win the head coaching job of the year. But that one's it. So your winners are going to be Bills, Ravens, Chargers, which is the number 2, number 3, and number 5 seed. Then coming up the next game, that means the Chiefs are going to play the lowest seed, which would be the Chargers. That is going to be a very interesting game. The Chargers played the Chiefs pretty damn tough, and they have the number 1 scoring defense. So it's going to be a defensive battle. And I will take as much... it's getting to a point where Patrick Mahomes has not looked good the last 2 years, but he's done enough to win games. Plain and simple. I used to kind of like him, but now I don't like him because he just cries way too much. They get some phantom calls. He's turning into Tom Brady pretty much. Which, I mean, if you're a fan of those two teams, I mean, everybody's gonna complain about them because they're winning. But I'm not a big fan. I'm a big fan of Jim Harbaugh. Is it Jim? Yeah, it's Jim Harbaugh. So I'm going to take Jim Harbaugh. I'm going to take the Chargers. I think the Chargers come better prepared. I think there's going to be a divisional game. I think the Chiefs might be a little sloppy. And I think if they come out sloppy and slow, like I think they would come out because they pretty much took 2 weeks off, I think the Chargers really come out hot. And if they're able to put a touchdown or 2 at the beginning of the game, they should easily take this game. Well, not easily. It's going to be a competitive game. It's still Patrick Mahomes we're talking about. I hate betting against him, but I'm going to take the Chargers on that one by probably a field goal in that game. Next game is going to be Bills versus Ravens. This is why the playoffs game should be considered should be consideration for MVP, because in this game is going to be Ravens versus Bills. Pretend number 2 and number 1. Number 1, Josh Allen MVP. Number 2, Lamar Jackson. So that should be 2 games right there. That should be a game right there. Last time they played, I believe the Bills just stomped the Ravens. That was a hell of a game by Josh Allen and really put and really looked really well on that game. Uh, Bills versus Ravens is going to be at Bills, and I love that the Bills play outside on the snow, so that should be really a great game to watch. Just hopefully it snows, so the snow factor gets in there. The biggest thing about the Bills is just Josh Allen is their whole team. Lamar Jackson finally has somebody there that could run with him. They can, and Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry to me is the X factor of this game. How well is Derrick Henry able to play? If Derrick Henry is able to play decently and able to play well, then I think at that point, then you're looking at the Ravens with the upset and taking it. And it'll be another heartbreak for Josh Allen pretty much. He'll win the MVP, and then all of a sudden, he cannot win another playoff game. And it's probably not going to be his fault again. It's probably going to be just that the defense cannot contain Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry just played that. Saying all that, I'm still going to take Josh Allen. I'm still going to take the MVP. I'm still going to take the home team. I still think he could win it. So I'm going to take, like I said, so I'm going to take the Bills on that one. And it's going to be a super close game. It's going to be whoever has the ball last, and that's when it comes down to. So I'll take the Bills on that game. And it's going to be in that case, it's going to be Bills versus Chargers. That's going to be a tough one for the simple reason that, just that Bills versus Chargers at Bills in the snow, too much. Bills win it. I don't know. I mean, and I'll take it back. Baltimore actually, I'm looking it up. Baltimore actually beat the Bills in Week 4, 35-10. It was pretty much. It was when the Bills were trying to find their way. It was a long time ago, so I wouldn't take too much into consideration into that game, just for the simple reason, just that it was a while back. So, it's Week 4. I mean, Week 4 was when what? Week 4 was September, late September. So it's been October, November, December. So it's been over 3 months. They're not the same team, both of them. Also, you got to remember, also the Ravens, I think, lost like the first 2 games also. So they're 2 different teams as far as the way they're playing right now. I'll take the Bills. And I feel bad for the Bills because I think they're losing the Super Bowl because they lose that advantage. If it was at Bills, if they were playing at Bills in the cold, then I would have taken the Bills. But it's going to be in a neutral zone and a neutral place in a dome. I'll take the Lions. So the Lions win their first Super Bowl. And I'll be cheering for them. Really feel bad for their franchise. It's been, since the 50s they won anything, a championship. It's good to see maybe Jared Goff. We had a revolution there, revitalized his career, and then Campbell's a hell of a coach. I like him. I like he just yells and screams and does freaking burpees with the team. I like Aaron Glenn, former Cowboy. Campbell, former Cowboy. Ben Johnson wants to finish the job there and win a Super Bowl, and then probably goes on to a head coaching job. So that's my revised picks of Super Bowls and my picks as far as playoffs. I'm going to go with that. That's just the way this is going to go, in my opinion. So that's about it. I mean, other than that, NFL news, Mike McCarthy is still the head coach of the Cowboys. Some coaches got fired. Jaguars head coach got fired. But I don't want to talk too much about that for the simple reason that there's going to be a lot of news and a lot of things are going to drop in the next the next week or so. You're going to see a lot of teams fire their coaches, a lot of different things like that. And also another thing, going back to the NBA, we're also going to probably see a lot of trades also. So that should be interesting to watch. And we'll talk about it more as we get to it because we're going to have less games to talk about. But so far, that's my catch up there. Sorry for the long podcast. Of course, the holidays, kids out of school. I didn't have much time, but now we're back on track. Next podcast we'll probably do Friday Friday we'll do the next one. We're gonna preview some NBA games. Preview some. Probably talk about college and college football games, because the college football games is gonna be the big ones coming up. And with the playoffs in the NFL. Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend and enjoy the rest of your week.